Welcome back to another explainer. If you're a business leader operating or expanding in the Gulf, you already know compliance is absolutely non-negotiable. But let's be real, actually getting compliant, it can be a massive headache. Today, we're tackling the beast that keeps so many C-suite execs up at night, the UAE Information Assurance Regulation, or UAEIA. I mean, just wrap your head around this number. 247 pages. That is the actual staggering length of the official regulatory document. It's like reading a novel, right? Except it's incredibly dense regulatory text. For a growing company, that's an immense burden. Trying to translate a 247-page behemoth into a practical day-to-day operational plan is a literal roadblock that completely halts teams in their tracks.
Honestly, it would realistically take anyone months of chaotic reading and endless planning to just get through it. But, well, that's exactly why we're here today. We are looking at a brilliantly distilled solution from Atlant Security. They've put together a simplified, actionable checklist that completely bypasses all those months of confusing, agonizing work. Our goal in this explainer is simple. We're going to translate this heavy, jargon-filled requirement into a confident, practical strategy you can actually use.
Okay, let's dive right into this. The entire regulation essentially boils down to 4 distinct, highly manageable pillars: security governance, risk management, security controls, and compliance and monitoring.
Starting right off with Pillar 1, security governance. This is the foundation of compliance.
So, for all the C-suite executives tuning in, this is entirely where you come in. Successful compliance doesn't start down in the IT basement. It starts right at the top, with strong leadership and a clearly documented strategy. This whole foundational step is really all about alignment. You've got to define a security strategy that directly maps to your broader business goals. That means developing specific plans for your major services, establishing a rock-solid governance framework, and assigning very clear responsibilities. And you can't just write these policies and file them away in some digital drawer. You absolutely must establish and communicate this information security policy to all stakeholders. From the board right down to the newest hires, everyone needs to know their exact role.
Moving on to Pillar 2, risk management, which focuses heavily on the risk-based approach.
Now, I want you to kind of reframe how you think about this one. Risk management isn't just a bunch of IT busywork. It's the actual strategic engine driving all of your security decisions across the organization. The flow is pretty straightforward. First, you conduct a comprehensive assessment to identify your actual threats and vulnerabilities. Second, you estimate the potential impacts those specific threats could have on your assets. Third, you develop and implement treatment plans, picking the appropriate controls to mitigate those risks. And finally, step 4, you monitor and review them regularly. And here's the cool part. Once those controls are actually applied, management is empowered to evaluate and strategically accept the residual risk. That's just the leftover risk after the defenses are up. It's a continuous, highly calculated cycle.
That brings us to Pillar 3, security controls, breaking down management versus technical.
Security controls actually make up the largest chunk of the UAE regulation, but Atlant Security's checklist smartly divides them into 2 operational categories. This makes implementation so much easier to delegate and track. It's basically a clear division of labor. On the management side, you have your non-technical executives handling the big picture stuff. Things like strategy, risk management, HR security like background checks, employee training, and tracking compliance. Then, over on the technical side, your IT and security teams are in the trenches handling asset management, cryptography, access control, and incident response. It just makes perfect sense.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the technical side gets implemented in practice. You see, specific asset classifications require highly tailored security measures. So, for example, if an asset has high value and sensitivity, the required action is maintaining an up-to-date inventory and identifying owners. That falls squarely under asset management. Or if you're dealing with sensitive systems and data, well, those demand multi-factor authentication under access control. And anytime you have third-party access, that mandates strict security assessments and audits. It keeps the whole approach intensely practical, completely jargon-free, and directly tied to action.
But beyond just controlling who gets in, technical operations require comprehensive, proactive defense. We're talking securing physical environments, aggressively monitoring operations for malware, and managing technical vulnerabilities with super timely patches. But let's be honest, what happens if the worst still occurs? Because it does happen. That's exactly why you must establish strict cryptographic policies and develop solid business continuity and disaster recovery plans. At the end of the day, you need to ensure the business keeps running, even during a major disaster or security breach. That continuity is literally what protects your bottom line. And finally, we arrive at Pillar 4, compliance and monitoring. The key here is continuous improvement.
I really want to remind everyone tuning in that UAE compliance is definitely not a one-and-done checklist that you just shove in a drawer and forget about. It is very much a living, breathing process. And yeah, that requires some administrative heavy lifting. You've got to regularly update the relevant regulators on your progress, conduct internal self-assessments, and actively facilitate external audits required by the TRA, which is the Telecommunications Regulatory Authority. Maintaining meticulous records of all these compliance activities is an absolute must. In fact, implementing a secure document management system to strictly control these sensitive documents is spelled out as a mandatory requirement.
But out of all these monitoring tasks, there is one absolutely crucial action item you cannot skip: establishing a performance monitoring system to track control effectiveness. You just cannot guess that your security is working. You need proof. Performance data must be regularly reviewed, and those specific metrics have to be reported directly back to management. That continuous feedback loop is exactly what ensures you're always improving and, more importantly, staying ahead of new threats.
As we wrap up this structured breakdown, I really want you to think about this specific approach from Atlant Security. Founder-led cybersecurity for companies that move fast. Compliance in weeks, vulnerabilities caught early. By utilizing the framework we just walked through, you can literally turn months of chaotic reading into a fast, highly manageable project. You stop guessing, and you actually start implementing.
Which leaves us with one final vital question. Is your organization UAE ready? I'd really encourage you to take a moment to reflect on your own gaps based on the 4 pillars we explored today. Take this checklist, convert it into actionable tasks, and honestly just start integrating these steps into your standard project management software right now. Don't let 247 pages of text intimidate you out of doing business securely. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.